So let's first talk about what was popping today. All right. So we had the president of the United States, and Lord knows I'd give anything for just a normal person, a non-evil person, a person with a conscience, a person with some sort of competence, a person with some coof, a person with anything other than what we have, I think would be better at this point in time. It is absolutely ridiculous. So here it is. You have former servicemen and women in some way that decided to do a video because they are very concerned about how evil this man is, and the fact that everyone surrounding him has decided that they're okay with him being evil so long as the evil doesn't hit them. Okay. So he decides that because these people who are continuing to serve this country in the form of being elected either U.S. House members or U.S. senators, he decided to say basically like hang them, like death to them. A sitting U.S. president said this. Now, you say anything near it on the internet, in a joke, anything in a text message, let me tell you, somebody's gonna be at your front door tracking you down to do something to you. And I just don't understand why we continue to lower the standard. I mean, like, I don't even understand how much lower you can go. Like, literally, we are all in hell with him right now. That's how I feel. Like, I legitimately feel that way. And speaking of flames, we had a fire today at the Capitol too. That was a lot. Yeah. One of our trains caught fire. I don't know if, somebody trying to send up a smoke signal. Somebody is trying to warn us. The question is whether or not we are listening. So in addition to this hate, and mind you, I know y'all remember how people were acting when it came to the fact that Charlie Kirk was killed, and like all the Democrats immediately came out, were like, hey, like political violence should be denounced. Period, point blank. Don't really care if you agree, disagree, whatever. But like, it should never get to the point that someone is openly calling for the killing of somebody, nor that someone participates in the killing of somebody because they disagree. We did that. Now, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, and my staff is watching, but I don't recall not one Republican saying anything today about the president. I don't recall them saying, Mr. President, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe you should not do that. No one should have to say that to the president, but that's where we are. In addition to this political hate for those on the opposite side of him, we know that now they want to reclassify swastikas and nooses. They really not that bad. They really not that bad. Y'all are just, being dramatic. They're not that bad. I guess they're not that bad when you don't know history. I guess they're not that bad when you remove history. I guess they're not that bad when I guess you want to appease white supremacists in this country, which I have been saying over and over and over and over. And the only thing that MAGA can say is that I'm a racist or I'm race baiting, and they don't even know what it means to bait anything, because that's a little bit of, but anyway, whole other issue. But the point is, like, they get mad when you call a thing, and I will continue to call things because I'm not crazy and I'm not blind, and I understand what it is when you tell people that there were good people on both sides. When you talk about Charlottesville, I understand when you say things like Proud Boys stand back and stand by. I understand that over 1,000 people were convicted when it came down to January 6th, and so many of them were neo-Nazis and Aryan Brotherhood and all of these various race-hating groups, these white supremacist groups, right? And next thing you know, they're going to be declared to be the soccer moms under this administration. That's what they going to do. They not even going, honestly, they're about to outlaw the idea of white supremacy and white hate. Like, they are about to be like, oh, that's not a thing. Forget the fact that you're talking about getting rid of like the classification for nooses in a time in which we have seen these random Black bodies be strung up down south. Also, seemingly at a time in which you're back in office, because what you do is you embolden the hate. You embolden everybody to take off their hoods. That is what he has done. He is the one that is producing this violence. Listen, in this country, what makes this country what it is that you can have disagreements and you don't go to jail, or you don't get lynched, or you don't get persecuted. Like, that's what you were supposed to have in America. He doesn't want America. He is constantly kissing the ass of everybody that does everything that is anti-democratic. Baby, you need to go be a ruler somewhere else, because America was not built for this, okay? And it's, clear that at least some of America is waking up. I sincerely hope and pray that the rest of America wakes up sooner rather than later. Okay, so speaking about the white supremacists, y'all, because that's what they are. They're actually like white losers, but that's a whole other issue. Because anybody that feels like they need to go around and talk about why they quote unquote are supreme, yeah, this is why they don't like the word equality and they don't like the word equity, because they are threatened by it. And well, we've seen their version of greatness. I mean, y'all mark my words, but Comey is gonna get off. Like, and the bad part is Democrats don't even like Comey like that. Like, we don't mess with you. We feel like the only reason we were ever subjected to Donald Trump in the first place was because of Comey. Like, we absolutely believe that he is the catalyst for getting us into this mess in the first place. We could have just put this man to rest and not had him win any election if Comey had not done what Comey did. And that was at a time in which everybody wanted to say it's the emails. The emails. Y'all gonna talk about the bombs he dropping? Yeah, the emails. Y'all gonna talk about him being all up and through the nasty Epstein files? No, y'all was still so mad about the emails. We ain't gonna talk about the Saudi prince. We ain't gonna talk about the stealing of American taxpayer dollars. We're not gonna talk about the destruction of our economy. We're not gonna talk about you tearing down the daggone East Wing. We are going to talk about, y'all was real upset. I need y'all to have that Hillary email energy right now. All the MAGA that had all the energy and all the smoke for the emails, they probably ain't even understand what the point was, because y'all ain't even have no smoke for the signal leaks. The signal leaks, y'all ain't have no smoke for that. None. But I'm going to need y'all to find your Hillary email energy and smoke, and I'm going to need y'all to go ahead and apply it accordingly, or at least find your Nixon. Find your Nixon energy. We need the Nixon Republicans to step forward, please. Please. Please, because Watergate, what Nixon is rolling over in his grave right now, talking about why in the hell did I ever leave? Listen, America believes in corruption, because if you've seen Donald Trump, baby, that was child's play what Nixon was up to. That is exactly what that means. Okay, but back to the white supremacists. Today, in my office, or he didn't get in my office, but there was a white power supremacist individual flashing white supremacist signs outside of my office at the Capitol. Thank you, Capitol Police, for all you do. I hate that y'all still ain't got your check yet. I just found that out, but I hear it's on the way. Thank you. Thank you for what you do. Because you know what, the whole KKK can decide that they're going to have a meeting right outside my door. And guess what? It's not going to change me being who I am. I just want to be clear about that. So you can save your time, save your energy, and potentially save your bail money and stay your raggedy racist ass at home. Don't come for me unless I send for you. Got it? Okay. I'm glad we got that PSA out the way.
What's occurred in this case with the Coast Guard is a policy change attempt to recategorize certain action symbols under a different framework: harassment hazing versus hate crime hate symbol. Because the draft policy was reversed, or at least updated after public outcry, the noose, as recognized historically as a hate symbol, remains banned under Coast Guard rules. Why people are worried and why confusion spreads. A noose isn't just a random symbol. For many, it evokes a past and continuing history of racial violence and terror. Changing its classification feels to many like rewriting history or diminishing the gravity of that history. What's real now? Attempts to declassify hate symbols, plus a resurgence of suspicion around lynchings. In November 2025, the U.S. Coast Guard under the Trump administration reportedly drafted a policy change that would no longer classify certain extremist symbols, including nooses, the swastika, and the Confederate flag, as hate symbols. Instead, the proposed new language would call them potentially divisive. The Washington Post. That policy triggered widespread outrage. Many lawmakers and civil rights advocates condemned the proposed reclassification as an attempt to whitewash historical terror and hate. Although the Coast Guard subsequently issued a memo claiming the symbols remained prohibited and doubled down that they would be punished if displayed, the fact that such a reclassification was even considered is deeply alarming to many. ABC News. Meanwhile, and this is the part many don't want to accept, there are growing and highly concerning reports that Black people are being found hanging from trees in recent years, sometimes ruled suicide or unexplained death, but raising serious suspicions and demand for justice. News One. One case cited in recent 2025-2026 reporting is DeMartravian Trey Reed, a 21-year-old Black student found hanging from a tree at his university campus. The initial ruling was suicide, but after public outcry and push for investigation, many believe foul play was likely. News One. Why this matters. Racism and history of terror won't just go away. A noose or a swastika isn't just a symbol. It's a historical weapon used to terrorize Black people, used by white supremacists, used in lynchings, and used to suppress entire communities. Trying to normalize or reframe that symbol under a bland term like divisive is morally and politically dangerous. When institutions like the Coast Guard entertain such reframing, even if they backpedal publicly, it signals that the battle over memory and meaning is ongoing. Hate doesn't vanish when we call it harassment instead of hate. At the same time, real violence, lynchings, suspicious suicides, public hangings continue to threaten Black lives today. And when investigations are shallow or circumstances are brushed aside, the legacy of white terror remains alive and unaddressed. We cannot let symbols of terror be rebranded. We cannot let hangings, symbolic or real, be swept under harassment or divisiveness. We must expose and demand full investigations into every suspicious death, every hanging, every noose. We must hold institutions accountable for refusing to acknowledge the true weight of hate and terror in America. Close quote. This isn't about politics. It's about humanity, history, and justice. There is clear, recent evidence that parts of the U.S. government under Trump have attempted to change how hate symbols, nooses, etc. are officially classified. And yes, there is a disturbing resurgence of racial terror disguised as suicides or accidents affecting Black people today. We must not allow these symbols or events to be watered down, relabeled, or forgotten. The more we tolerate erasure or repackaging of hate, the more we enable a return to open, normalized racism. DeMartravian Trey Reed, found hanging from a tree at Delta State University, Mississippi, September 2025. On September 15, 2025, Trey Reed, a 21-year-old Black student, was found hanging from a tree on campus. Ms. Magazine, police and local coroner initially said there was no sign of foul play, and later a state medical examiner ruled the death a suicide. PBS. Still, the student's family, represented by civil rights attorney Ben Crump and many activists, call for a full independent investigation, arguing that in a place with such a history of racial terror, a hanging can't be dismissed quickly. Ms. Magazine. The case has reignited fears and awareness. Many on social media echo the phrase, "Black people don't lynch themselves." The Economic Times. Earl Smith, Black man found hanging in tree, Albany, New York, mid-2025. In June 2025, a 58-year-old Black man was found hanging from a tree in Albany, New York. www.wbng.com. Police ruled the death a suicide, but local community members and activists say the case has disturbing similarities to lynching. WBNG.com. The case sparked protests in nearby communities, e.g. Binghamton, with calls for transparency and independent investigation. www.wbng.com. More broadly, reports of multiple black and brown men found hanging in public locations in recent years. According to a 2025 article collecting black people lynched in recent years, there is a disturbing pattern of individuals, many of them black, being found hanged in public, often ruled suicides, but with little transparency or deeper investigation. News One, as one commentary piece put it, African Americans don't hang themselves from trees, expressing how such cases in 2025 still echo the terror of historical lynchings. Good Faith Media, why this matters. Context of historical racial terror. Between 1882 and 1968, the U.S. saw thousands of documented lynchings. Nearly 3,500 African Americans, many victims hung from trees, tortured, mutilated, or burned. NAACP, lynching was not just murder. It was a system of racial terror used to suppress and intimidate black communities, often with public spectacle and complicity or inaction from law enforcement. Today's cases matter because they aren't isolated. They echo that past. When a black person is found hanging in a region with a long history of racial violence, and authorities quickly rule it suicide without transparent investigation, the parallels to lynching history are deeply alarming. Families, civil rights lawyers, activists demand full, independent investigations, especially where the deceased is black, and where there is a historical pattern of racial terror in the area, e.g. Mississippi, Deep South, or historically black-heavy neighborhoods. They ask for release of all evidence, toxicology, autopsy details, security camera footage, witness statements. For many, suicide rulings feel like closure without truth. At the same time, in many cases, official autopsies and coroner reports find no sign of foul play, and law enforcement maintains there is no evidence, making definitive conclusions difficult without deeper independent oversight. These aren't just tragic deaths, they're warnings. When a black man is found hanging from a tree in 2025, we must demand truth, not a quick label of suicide, because history is watching. If you care about justice and truth, subscribe. Share these stories. Demand independent investigations, especially when the official verdict feels too easy. These are only those that have been reported or collected of unsolved or contested hanging deaths of black people, or cases widely debated as possible lynchings, suspicious hangings in the U.S. since 2000. Many of these remain controversial. In most, death was ruled suicide or undetermined, but families, communities, or civil rights observers continue to call for deeper investigations. Notable cases since 2000, hanging deaths and suspected lynching-style incidents, name, age, year, location, and circumstances. Official ruling controversy. Family and Civil Rights Acton. Philip Carroll, 22, 2018, found hanging from a tree in Jackson, Mississippi. America's Black Holocaust Museum, ruled a suicide. Family and civil rights activists question the context. America's Black Holocaust Museum. Otis Bird, 55, 2015, found hanging from a tree in Port Gibson, Mississippi. The Washington Post, official investigation by federal authorities concluded no evidence of homicide. The Washington Post. Robert Fuller, 24, 2020, found hanging from a tree near City Hall in Palmdale, California. 2 deaths within weeks, also in Victorville, for another black man. Wikipedia. Ruled a suicide by county sheriffs. Family and many in public raised suspicions. Wikipedia. Malcolm Harsh, 38, 2020, found hanging from a tree near Victorville, Southern California, about 50 miles from Robert Fuller's case. Voice of America officially ruled no foul play suspected initially. Family and community voiced doubt. Voice of America. Travanti Jamal Schubert Helton, 29, 2024, found hanging from a tree in a wildlife management area in Hiawassee, Georgia. TV One. Police ruled death a suicide in 2024. Family challenged that ruling. T. Denoris Richardson, 39, 2024, found hanging in a carport abandoned house in Colbert County, Alabama, near his home in Sheffield. CBS News. Initial autopsy ruled suicide. Family commissioned private autopsy, which said cause was asphyxia by neck compression, and stated evidence was insufficient to conclude suicide. Circumstances: no note, no connection to house, recent lawsuit against police, remain suspicious. WT Oak News. DeMartravian Trey Reed, 21, 2025, found hanging from a tree on his university campus, Mississippi. The Marshall Project, police coroner said no signs of foul play, ruled suicide. Civil rights lawyer retained by family, public outcry, demand for independent investigation. AP News, note on sources. Some cases, like those in Mississippi, Carol Bird, are cataloged by organizations tracking modern suspected lynchings. America's Black Holocaust Museum, for West Coast cases, Fuller Harch, media and community-led investigations raised questions even when officials ruled suicide. People's Daily Online. The case of Richardson is especially recent and contested, with conflicting autopsies and an ongoing federal review. WTOP News. Why many remain contested. Common patterns and concerns. In most of these cases, deaths are officially ruled suicides, often quickly. That ruling frequently happens even when context seems suspicious, e.g. hanging from a public tree, no note, no known history of mental illness, proximity to known racism lynching hotspots. Families and communities frequently raise concerns, citing missing evidence, lack of thorough investigation, missing context, e.g., no ties to location or recent history of police encounters/legal issues. The trauma of historical lynchings, especially in places like the Deep South, looms large. For many, any Black man found hanging is a trigger that evokes legacy of racist terror. That legacy heightens skepticism towards suicide rulings, because historically, lynchings were often brushed off as suicides or accidents. The Washington Post calls for independent autopsies, federal investigations, release of evidence. Photos, surveillance, toxicology, witness statements tend to follow, but results are often inconclusive or kept secret, fueling distrust, suspicion, and community frustration. These are not isolated accidents, but rather a pattern of hanging deaths among Black men in public or semi-public settings across decades, many in regions with historical racial violence. Because official investigations often conclude suicide quickly, without transparency or community engagement, the doubt will persist, especially among families and civil rights groups pushing for accountability. Many of these cases remain unresolved in the public eye. We may never see full independent reviews, or if we do, the findings may be contested or hidden. The pattern suggests that claims of lynchings being a thing of the past are at best incomplete. For many, the threat, symbolic or literal, remains real. Selected cases 2000 to 2025. 1. Raynard Johnson, 2000, Kokomo, Sandy Hook, Mississippi. Official ruling, suicide, local FBI closed federal probe. Notes, found hanging from a pecan tree. Community and Jesse Jackson protested. Family disputes ruling. Source, Washington Post, investigation of Mississippi suspected lynchings. The Washington Post 2. Nick Naylor, 2003, Porterville, Mississippi official ruling, suicide. Notes, found hanging with a dog chain. Family calls it lynching. Source, Washington Post. The Washington Post 3. Roy Veal, 2004, near Woodville, Mississippi. Official ruling consistent with suicide, state police. Notes, relatives reported hood overhead, family calls for investigation. Source, Washington Post. The Washington Post 4. Frederick Germain Carter, 2010, Greenwood, Mississippi. Official ruling, suicide, state ME. Notes, found hanging in a white neighborhood. Relatives demanded federal probe. Source, Washington Post. The Washington Post 5. James Craig Anderson, 2011, Jackson, Mississippi. Official ruling, homicide by beating, federal hate crime convictions for attackers. Notes, not a hanging but a racially terrorizing murder, a federal judge described as a lynching-style attack, included because DOJ linked it to modern racial terror patterns. Source, Washington Post. The Washington Post 6. Otis James Byrd, 2015, Port Gibson, Mississippi. Official ruling, no evidence of homicide, federal review closed. Notes, found hanging from a tree. DOJ FBI reviewed and closed the case. Family remains skeptical. Sources, DOJ statement, CBS News coverage. Justice.gov, 7. Philip Carroll, 2017, Jackson, Mississippi. Official ruling, suicide. Notes, found hanging from a tree. Early conflicting reports about hands tied. Family questioned quick ruling. Source, Jackson Free Press, Washington Post database. Jackson Free Press 8. DeAndre Montreal Hopkins, 2019, Columbus, Mississippi. Official ruling, not a homicide, local police. Notes, found hanging from a tree on Luxapalila Creek Bank. Family pushed for clarity. Source, Washington Post. The Washington Post 9. Lennon Lacey, 2014, Bladenboro, Swingset, North Carolina. Official ruling, suicide. Local, federal investigators found no evidence of homicide. Notes, teen found hanging from a swing set, persistent family community doubts, FBI later reviewed. High-profile contested case. Sources, Marshall Project, WNC ABC, DOJ coverage. The Marshall Project 10. Robert Fuller, 20 Palmdale, California. Official ruling, suicide, Los Angeles County ME. Notes, found hanging from a tree in public park, community outrage and calls for transparency. Source, LA County ME press release, ABC reporting. Los Angeles County Medical Examiner 11. Malcolm Harsh, 2020, Victorville, California. Official ruling, suicide, San Bernardino County Sheriff. Notes, found hanging days before Robert Fuller in nearby area. Dominique Alexander, 2020, Fort Tryon Park, New York City. Official ruling, suicide, NYCME. Notes, found hanging, family and community expressed doubt. Source, news reporting collected by News One. News 113, Omari Bryant, 2020, Homerville, Georgia. Official ruling, suicide. Notes, found outside motel. Photos and non-working surveillance cameras raised community suspicion. Source, News One compilation, local reports. News 114, Javian McGee, 2024, Henderson, North Carolina. Official ruling, suicide, local police. Notes, truck driver found with rope around neck. Family contested lack of mental health history. Source, News 1, local ABC 11 reporting. News 115, Trevani Jamal Schubert Helton, 2024, Hiawassee, Georgia. Official ruling, suicide, Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Notes, found hanging in wildlife management area. Family called for more review. Source, News 1 GBI statement. News 116, Denaris Richardson, Nana, 2024, Colbert County, Alabama. Official ruling, state autopsy ruled suicide. Family commissioned private autopsy found insufficient evidence to conclude suicide. Notes, conflicting autopsies. Family alleges ties to earlier police complaints and calls for federal review. Sources, ABC News, local reporting on conflicting autopsies. ABC News 17, Yolna Yo-Yo Lubrin, 2023, Orlando, Florida. Official ruling, suicide, ME confirmed ligature compression, MDMA present. Notes, family criticized speed, quality of investigation, community raised concerns. Source, Orlando Sentinel, News 1 summary. News 118, Earl Smith, 2025, Albany, New York, found in nearby area. Official ruling, suicide, local police. Notes, found hanging from a tree, sparked regional protests and demands for investigation. Source, News 1, local reporting. News 119, Omari, or similar regional case recaps. Various, Mississippi list continues. Official ruling, varied, mostly suicide or closed investigations. Notes, Jill Colin Jefferson's research and Washington Post reporting documented at least 8 suspected hangings in Mississippi since 2000, showing a cluster in one state with historical lynching trauma. Source, Washington Post investigation, Jill Colin Jefferson's work. The Washington Post 20. Willie Andrew Jones Jr., 2018, Mississippi, one of Mississippi list cases. Official ruling, suicide, local reports. Notes, included in Mississippi suspected lynching compilations. Source, Washington Post local coverage. The Washington Post 21. Raynard Johnson, listed above, included again in Mississippi list for emphasis. Official ruling, suicide. Federal probe closed. Source, Washington Post. News 1, Democracy Now!, The Marshall Project, 2000s to 2025 across multiple states. Official rulings, mostly suicides or no foul play. Families and civil rights groups contest many rulings. Notes, News One and other outlets have compiled lists of 10 to 20 contested hangings in recent years. The Marshall Project covered the Delta State Trey Reed case, 2025, and historical context. Sources, News One compilation, The Marshall Project, Democracy Now!, News 123, cases where multilateral review occurred, FBI, DOJ, and found no evidence of homicide. Examples, Otis Bird, 2015, Lennon Lacey, 2014. Official ruling, federal reviews often concluded insufficient evidence for federal civil rights prosecution. Note, DOJ FBI closures have not ended family or community skepticism. Sources, DOJ press release, ESPN DOJ coverage. Justice.gov 24, patterns recognized by civil rights investigators, Jill Colin Jefferson, EJI, national context. Finding, modern contested hangings often share common features: quick suicide rulings, limited scene preservation, scant public evidence, and locations with histories of racial terror. Source, Washington Post profile of Mississippi research, Equal Justice Initiative, historical context. The Washington Post 25, Demartrian Trey Reed, 2025, Delta State University, Mississippi, campus. Official ruling as of reporting. Authorities stated no signs of foul play. Family retained Ben Crump and called for independent review. Investigation ongoing. Autopsy pending, earlier reports. Case drew immediate national attention and demands for transparency. Campus surveillance footage reportedly exists and is under review. Sources: The Marshall Project, The Guardian, People, AP reporting. The Marshall Project. Short analysis and patterns. Evidence-backed. Clusters in Mississippi. Investigative work shows Mississippi accounts for multiple contested hangings since 2000, a pattern that echoes the state's historical record of lynchings. Families and civil rights orgs say investigations are often rushed and inadequately preserved. The Washington Post. West Coast 2020 cluster. The Palmdale Victorville hangings. Robert Fuller, Malcolm Harsh raised national attention and prompted community protests even after official suicide rulings. Los Angeles County Medical Examiner, conflicting autopsies. Some recent cases, e.g. Dennis Richardson, show conflicting autopsy conclusions, state versus family commissioned, which keeps public doubt alive. If you care about justice, hit subscribe now, share this video, like it, and ring the bell so these stories can't be hidden. Black people found hanging in public, ruled suicide, yet families and communities demand answers. This isn't history class. This is now. Share this video, demand transparency in every one of these cases, and subscribe to Global Politics 1 so we keep exposing the truth. Don't let them rename terror as divisive. Call it what it is and demand justice. Subscribe to Global Politics 1. Truth matters.